I don't know if you can hear that, but it's definitely raining outside. Sounds the ideal time to make a project, so here it is. It's a set of push pads for use on the router table. Help save your fingers. You can make them in two different flavours. You can make them like this with the handle on a slight lean, or like this with the handle straight up and down. Both push pads come with a PVC end here. This one here sits below the surface here and can hook the material to be pushed through the router. This one here is exactly the same, but I've just turned the PVC upside down so that you've got a nice flat surface here, and you can use this to hold down the material as it goes through the router. The angle you put the handle on is entirely up to you. For those of you who want to make your own, I'll put a link in the description box below. So why not sit back and enjoy as I show you how I made these push pads. I've started by gluing together two pieces of 15mm plywood to give me a single 30mm thick piece. I've now clamped it to the table, and this is where I ran into my first issue. My clamps were not high enough to clamp to the top of the material. So what I did is, on the table saw, I cut this rebate, removed the first layer of plywood from it with a chisel, and then that gave me somewhere I could put my clamps. Fortunately, this piece of plywood is a lot bigger than it needs to be to cut the two handles. Now I'm going to cut the base for this one here, and this is one of those times where you could actually consider just cutting the base on a table saw, because really it's just a square with a couple of holes in it, but I'm going to cut it out on the CNC anyway. Now I want to put a wee tilt on these handles so that when you're using it on the block, it will be on a slight angle, and they'll be pushing your material towards your fence if you're using a fence. So it'll basically end up like this. So the blade on my table saw does not tilt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a block in here, a block here. I'm going to sit my handle here and just run it through the saw, and that will give me an angle. I don't know what the angle is. I'll just run it through the saw and we'll see what it comes up with. Now I can tell that the angles are the same, because if I do this and hold it flat, these pieces should be a match set. So there we have it. That's going to give me push blocks with a slightly angled handle. So I need to countersink the hole here so that when I put the screw in, it will be sunk deep into this material. And on this side I need to put a slight countersink here. At the same time I also need to enlarge in the hole here so that the screw can easily slide through. Now this bit here will easily do that job for me. It'll do both the countersink and enlarge in the hole for me as well. Those are sunk nice and deep. On this side here, I'll just go through and make a slight countersink. So there we have it, the completed hole. The screw can easily slide through it like so and doesn't bind, and it's countersunk. It will pull deep inside this piece here, which is going to be important when we surface this here with a rubber coating. So now the time's come to screw these together. I've been over these here with a bit of sandpaper, just breaking the edges on it, and these corners here, not worrying about the bottom. And I basically just want to screw that to here. Now I'm not going to bother drilling holes in the handles here. I'm just going to work out where it should be by eye. So I'm just going to hold it in place and just look at where it looks correct, and I'll turn it over, put the screw in and tighten it down. Now the advantage of having the countersinks on this side here is when I screw it in like this here, I don't need to worry about the burr of material forcing this here up and making it not flush to the surface, because it now has some place to go. Likewise, because the hole through here for the screw is bigger than the screw flutes here, it means that the screw will be able to pull tight against the handle there. So again, I'm just going to hold it in place and screw it. I've decided I'm going to put a bit of glue on it, and I don't know if you can see it here, but when I put the screw in here, this piece here pulled out of the timber on both ends, and that's what that countersink is for. When I screwed it in, there was somewhere for this chip of wood to go, so when I screwed it in, it would pull up nice and tight. If I didn't do that countersink, I would not get away with this. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue here, because I won't get a chance to do this once I've glued my foam on. So now I had a good hunt around the workshop looking for some contact glue, and the only tube of it I could find was well past its use by date. So I'm going to use some polyurethane glue instead, as it's meant to bond wood and other materials anyway, so that should work out fine. I'm going to use this foam here, and this came as wrapping around a spiral lock chimney. When I replaced my chimney about 10 years ago, I saved a large sheet of foam, just kept it rolled up in my workshop, and it should just be ideal for this particular job. I've given this side here a wipe down with a damp rag to clean any dust and stuff off it, so I get a better adhesion of the foam to the wood. And I'm just wiping down the wood surface here with a damp rag so I can get a bit of moisture, because this stuff is moisture cure, and at least one side of the piece you're being glued has to be wood. So now I've got a good layer of glue on there. I'm just going to press it down onto the sheet of foam, like so. I'll now do the second one, and again I'm just going to press this down onto my piece of foam there. So what I need to do now is I'm going to back them like this, and then I'm going to put them in the vise, which will keep the pressure on it. The other option is I can just clamp it like that using some clamps, but the vise will probably be easier. Now that the glue has dried overnight, it's time to trim around the foam here to finish it off. Now, this really isn't the best way of doing it because the blade barely reaches, or actually doesn't reach the foam, so you end up putting it in on an angle and tearing the foam. What I've done is I've put down a nice piece of flat MDF here, and I'm just going to use the blade because I don't have a knife with a longer blade on it, and I'm just going to gently run it along the edge like so, and just carefully work my way through the foam. Now the next thing we need is this here. This is just a piece of PVC that I cut out on the table saw and drilled a couple of countersunk holes into it. And that's going to go on the back here, just with a couple of screws to hold it in place. If this is the one pushing the material through, then this piece sits down like so. If it's the paddle being used just to push it at the front of the material, or just hold it down at the front of the material, then you turn the piece of PVC up the other way and it won't get in the way. And just by loosening these screws or undoing these screws, rotating the piece round, you can either have it as a push or just as a hold down block, whichever you need for the task. Now it is important, however, that you do put this here on the correct edge. Because these handles are beveled, it does matter which side this here goes on. If you make one like this here, where the handles are straight up and down, then it doesn't matter which end it goes on because you can use it either way around when you're pushing the material through. Now the correct way to do this is to simply hold the PVC in position so that it is flush with the bottom of the plywood and is in the center there. And then with a drill, we can drill our holes. I'm using number 6 screws to hold this in place. Put that first screw in, align the piece and drill the second hole. Right, so there it is there. Now this one here, of course, I want to use to actually push the material through, so I'm just going to take it off and reverse it, and there we have it there. It's about a 1/4 of an inch of hang down there to push my material through the saw or the router, whichever I'm doing. So there you are. I've got push blocks I can use for moving material as needed. Well, it's still raining. I hope you've enjoyed watching me make this set of push pads, and maybe you'll make your own. Why not make a couple of sets? Give them away as Christmas presents. If you've enjoyed this video, please remember to like it. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to me on YouTube and following me on Google+. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Cheers!